love. Well, I seen you there just the other day, and I just don't know what to say, but you just passed me by. Wanna be hugging, squeezing you tight. Of my love, you got the best of my love. Sweet, sweet love, you're a sweet, sweet love. You're my sweet, sweet love. You're a sweet, sweet love. Well, the time has passed and the days gone by. We're still not together. Wonder why? Give me a try. You got the best of my love. Best of my love. Sweet, sweet love. You're a sweet, sweet love. You're a sweet, sweet love. You're a sweet, sweet love.
Good afternoon. The Housing, Human Services, and Transportation Committee meeting of October 5th, 2017, and it's 1:35 p.m. will now come to order. Before we begin, may I please request that we all turn off or silence our cell phones or other noise-making devices. At this time, I'd like to introduce our committee voting members. I am your chair, Stacy Crivello, and our vice chair, Robert Carroll.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Councilmember Alika Atai.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. And Councilmember Ricky Hokama. Thank you. And Councilmember Kelly King.
Aloha, Chair.
Thank you for being here. Excuse at this time is Councilmember Don Guzman and Chair Mike White. With us today is also our non-voting members, Councilmember Ellie Cochran.
Aloha, Chair.
Thank you for being here. And Councilmember Yukile Sugimura.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. With us is our Corporation Counsel from Administration, Jennifer Oana. Thank you. And in the gallery is Deputy Corporation Counsel Jeff Ueoka. And also from our administration, our Director for Department of Housing and Human Concerns, Carol Ryman and Buddy Almeida. And for our first item on the agenda, HHT4, we have with us Director of Public Works, David Good, Will Spence. No, that's not Will Spence. That's David Ratz, Department of Planning. And from the Department of Fire and Public Safety, Captain Paul Haake and Chief Murray. And from the Department of Water Supply, Dave Taylor. Before we begin, also like to introduce our staff. Substituting for us today for our committee secretary is Stacy Venere. And with us is our two legislative analysts, Shelly Espeleta and Salmalu Mataafa. Members, thank you for all being here. Before we get into the discussion, we'll get into public testimony. Assisting us this afternoon from the Hana District Office is Don Lono.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Dawn Lono at the Hana office, and I have no one waiting to testify.
Thank you, Don. And from the Lanai District Office is Denise Fernandez.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Denise Fernandez on Lanai, and we have no one waiting to testify.
Thank you. And for the Molokai District Office, Ms. Ella Alcon.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Ella Alcon on Molokai, and there is no one here waiting to testify.
Mahalo. And do email us or contact our staff if you have any testifiers that shows. And if for individuals who will be testifying in the chamber, please sign up at the desk located in the 8th floor just outside the chamber door. Before I go any further, I want to introduce our council member, Don Guzman. Thank you for being here. And if you will be testifying from the remote testimony locations, of course, please sign up with the council staff at that location. Testimony will be limited to the items listed on the agenda today, and pursuant to the rules of the council, each testifier will be allowed to testify for up to 3 minutes per item. When testifying, please state your name and the name of any organization you are representing. At this time, I'm going to ask staff to call on our first testifier.
Chair, the first testifier is Davis Kahakawila Cortez, testifying on HHT 21.
Aloha, good afternoon. My name is Davis Kahakawila Cortez. I'm pleasing to ask if you please to amend for the rental housing credits, for the housing credits to help build more affordable homes for others. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification for the testifier? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chair, the next testifier is Tasha Kama, testifying on HHT 21. She will be followed by Sandra Aki.
Aloha, Chair Crivello and members of the Housing Committee. My name is Tasha Kama, and I'm a member of the Maui Catholic Charities Advisory Committee, so I just wanted to put that out there because sometimes you see me with a different hat, but I just wanted to put that out there. But for today, I'm testifying on behalf of myself as an individual. And I'm here in support of housing credits for rental housing projects that are 100% affordable. Housing credits build affordable and low-income housing, period. Only those who want to build affordable and low-income housing should use housing credits, which may possibly generate more projects at 100% affordability. We are in a housing crisis, and we need to build 1,400 units a year for the next 10 years if we expect to keep our children, our grandchildren, and the next 7 generations to continue to exercise their culture here at home. Too many of our children and family and friends are leaving these islands, and the fabric of our culture becomes so eroded that Naumea Hawaii will cease to exist. We need to work towards the creation of more affordable rentals and homes for the sake of our keiki. I urge you to please vote to amend this ordinance. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification for the testifier? If not, thank you for being here.
You.
Chair, the next testifier is Sandra Aki, testifying on HHT 21. She will be followed by Bill Frampton.
Hello and good afternoon, Chair, Stacy, Crivello, and members of the Council. My name is Sandra Key. I'm the founder and president of Halemakana o Waiale Tenants Association. I reside at Halemakana o Waiale, and when my husband Abraham died 2 months ago, I was left worrying how I was going to pay the next month's rent without his income. Knowing I alone on Social Security would not be able to carry the entire burden myself. The housing tax credit was created as a market incentive for the acquisition and development or rehabilitation of affordable rental housing. It encourages the investment of private equity in the development of affordable rental housing. The housing credit helps build affordable and low-income housing that I alone with my income can qualify for based on the Kahului Lani subdivision plan presented by Catholic Charities Hawaii, which is 100% affordable and eligible for tax credits. There are many widows living at Halemakana o Waiale who are struggling to pay their rent. The Kahului subdivision is an answer to prayers for those of us senior citizens whose incomes lie between 30 to 60% of the area median income. I ask for your vote on amending the workforce housing ordinance for tax credits on affordable housing rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions or clarification for the testifier? No, thank you for being here, Ms. Key.
Thank you.
Chair, the next testifier is Bill Frampton, testifying on HHT 21. He will be followed by Thelma Akita Kealoha.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Bill Frampton. I'm here today speaking as a Maui Advisory Board member for Catholic Charities of Hawaii. I'm respectfully asking for your support for the proposed amendment to the Maui County Code, Chapter 2.96, specifically as it allows or would allow for credits to be issued for 100% affordable rental projects, especially for 60% and below AMI. Clearly, there are many folks who could come up here and better testify to the details of the precise numbers of needs of affordable housing on Maui, but I don't think anybody could disagree. What we would note is that what's been proposed by the Housing and Human Concerns, the amendment to the ordinance that allows for rentals, not just for sale units, but for rentals, allowing that and passing that amendment will provide Maui's nonprofit groups like Catholic Charities of Hawaii with a very valuable resource to develop and build affordable rentals for low-income residents and families of Maui. One example that we would like to note is that Catholic Charities does have a proposed 100% affordable housing project called Kahului Lani that is going to be 164 units specifically for seniors and for the seniors who earn 60% AMI down to 30% AMI. We bring that project up just as a note, as that's a perfect example of how this rental, allowing for rental credits, not just for sale credits for developers of market projects or split projects, but for really for the nonprofits. And you members would have received today some support in writing from other nonprofits who may not be able to make it here today. But we, again, humbly respect that you include that and we're able to pass that out of committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Members, any questions or
Chair, I have a
clarification? Councilmember King.
Thank you, Chair, and I would invite any other testifiers who want to comment on this, but just if you could give me your thoughts on giving credits to projects that are only for 10 years, affordable for 10 years versus 30 years or perpetuity.
Yes, I could offer some thoughts, and just in relation that I've done some projects and I'm working currently on some projects now that would include something like that. I think any possible way that we can get affordable housing units built on this island should be encouraged, especially from incentive bases that are helped or receiving help from the County of Maui or the state. I understand that having the need to have units in perpetuity versus time restrictions on the deeds, which is why we are excited about the project we're proposing. That will be for 62 years is what's being proposed for in Kahului. But I would support all ranges of levels to provide choices at multiple options. Not every single project would be 10 years or 15 or 30, whatever it may be, but there's certain projects can do it. Certain projects will have difficulty doing it depending upon many factors such as acquisition costs, development costs, timing, funding for down payments and whatnot. All that comes into play. But I do support a whole range of any kind of affordable housing that we can provide. I think if we could provide more of it, it's going to help make it competitive so that people maybe have to start looking at that kind of stuff.
Okay, and then my other question is, like, you know, if we're giving credits, do you think it should be equal credits whether your project is for 10 years or for 30 years or for 60 years? You're in favor of that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just kind of wanted to get that.
Yeah, it certainly does depend on case by case and the nature of each project. Some projects can afford to do so based upon their funding and financing. Some projects can't do that. So I do support, though, that the way it's being proposed by the Housing and Human Concerns now and those proposed amendments, I strongly support those proposed amendments all the way across the board.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions or clarification? If not, thank you for being here, Mr. Prime.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions.
Chair, the next testifier is Thelma Akita Kealoha, followed by Lucianne Tine.
Aloha and good afternoon, Madam Chair, County Council members. I thank you for allowing us to say, what we need to. A lot of us are here on behalf of the proposed amendment for 2.96 and hoping that you're going to pass it. I also wanted to add that we did add, a lot more people were going to come forward. Some of them had to do written testimony because we have the fair today. So after this, I'm supposed to walk in the parade. So, so we're kind of scrambling. And I know Roy Katsuda put in a written testimony as well in support of this amendment, and he's doing a float. So, I am going to read my testimony. Okay, I am in favor of the bill amending 2.96 relating to the rental housing credits. Housing credits help build affordable housing, whether that's home ownership or rentals. We are in desperate need of affordable housing, right? We all know that. And definitely not building enough to fill the needs in our community. I mean, that's obvious. I work for Catholic Charities Hawaii. I see people every day coming into my office looking for housing. We have a housing rental shortage, and the rents out there are ridiculous. They can't afford that. We have homeless people who work. If they're couples, they both work and they still cannot get into housing because it's so expensive. Our housing project is going to accept seniors from 55 and older. 55, when I was 55, I still had a minor in my house, So some 55-year-olds have minors. Some 55-year-olds are part of the workforce, and they're out there working and struggling, I might add. Okay, let me take a breath. You know that saying, build it and they will come? Well, we haven't built it, but they're all over the island, again, relating to the shortage in our housing, both rental and affordable home ownership. We're really hoping that this amendment gets passed because we want to build 164 affordable housing units for seniors 55 and older. We're talking about 60%, 50%, 30% of AMI. A single person can make under $19,000 today, and if the rent was available today, he would be paying less than $500 for rent, and this would include all of his utilities, electric, water, and refuse. So
3 minutes.
Thank you. I overstayed my time. But I am asking you for your support of this amendment, and I thank you for being here and listening to us, and I also thank you for your commitment to our Maui housing needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions or clarification? Councilmember King.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here. So what I'm hearing is you wouldn't be able to do this project without these credits.
Exactly.
These are really important to you. And then one of my concerns in here is the 30 days that, if you can't rent it out in 30 days and you can go into the market. Do you think that's enough time for you to fill the 160 units?
I have to apologize because I know we are going to have a management firm coming in. We're going to have a management on site. And I don't know exactly what the details are. We have a senior housing right now on Oahu, and my belief is they had no problem filling the housing for them for first phase, and then now they're getting through with the second phase. But I do have my management team here, the project management team, and also our planning department team. I'm not sure if they know the answer to that question. Do you guys know? Is it okay if I defer to him
later?
Okay, so
resource people.
If I can defer that to him and have him respond, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. If there's no objection, we'll identify our resource people for this item.
That would be great. Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chair, the next testifier is Lucienne Dene, testifying on HHT 21, HHT 22, and HHT 4.
Thank you. My name is Lucienne Dene. I'm testifying on behalf of myself as an individual, although I am a member of the Face Maui Housing Committee as well, and do support where they're going. I'd like to first address HHT4, which is the one-stop shop, and I think it's great that the the TIG and the council has engaged all the departments so that we can see if there's room for improvement here. And I'm glad to see that the fire department is here today and the water department, because from the stories that I hear, oftentimes Public Works in general does fairly timely review of permits, but then they wait for fire department or they wait for water department to get back and forth. And sometimes you have conflicting needs from various departments. I mean, we can all remember the Veterans Hall in Molokai as an example of that, where it was just, hung up for years because there just didn't seem to be a way for the departments to work things out among themselves. So will this computer program that's being proposed do that? I'm not sure it will. I think it will be great to help keep people more informed about where their permit process stands. But I can just say personally, going back and forth with the fire department, with different personnel and this and that, they're good people. They're busy, I'm sure, doing important things. But it just can take months, if not years, to get a straight answer about what is needed, and then sometimes that answer is inconsistent with something else. So I just urge that if we can look at a way where all these departments can be at a similar table talking about their similar needs, whether it's in person or whether it's through an electronic means, that is really the goal. And many years ago, before I moved here, I lived in the town of Leucadia, and our next neighboring city was Carlsbad. And as president of the town council, I was given a tour of their planning process. They had one stop. They had a place where a person came in with the permit and talked to all the different departments, got their checklist. Everybody was on the same page, and their average permit was processed in about 4 months. So, it is done in other places, and should we do it, can we do it? I leave that to this august body, but I think we do need to ask those questions. I'd like to move on to HHT 2-1. I personally have nothing against, us extending these credits and amending different sections and making sure that affordable rentals, truly affordable rentals, have access to the same tax credits as everybody else. However, I do have a problem with Part 6. I just have to ask, is it really needed that after 30 days, if you're building an affordable project, that you can just rent it on the open market if you can't find somebody for that unit in 30 days and it can stay at that price for a year? I mean, if we have such a shortage of affordable housing, why is that language needed? It seems like there would be people in line to rent these units. So I do think that the council should ask that hard question. And also, on the sense of incentives for every single workforce housing project, I think we only need to look at the 201H process. That requires 51% affordable, whereas our county ordinance requires 25%. And that incentive has caused, a lot more people to offer those kinds of projects. In other words, it's giving us more housing in the ranges that we need it. By giving incentives on these credit and not having it be just across the board that if you have, a 100% affordable project or a 25% affordable project, you're eligible for the same amount of credits, I just think would be wise and would be an incentive. So it's not penalizing the other people. It's just saying, hey, you give more, you get more. And I think that that's what the public wants. To conclude on HHT 2-2, once again, the section 6 on there is kind of questionable. And I believe Stan Franco of FACE also submitted testimony saying that, in general, these kind of housekeeping amendments seem to have made sense, but that section 2.96090 D6 just seems kind of out of place. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? There be none. Thank you for being here. I'd also like to take this time to recognize Chair Mike White. Thank you for being here. Our next testifier.
Chair, the next testifier is Lena Staton, testifying on agenda item HHT 21.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Council members. I'm here this afternoon to testify on behalf of our Amendment 2.96. I am with the Maui Rescue Mission, and also I am with Faith, and I am on their charter, their charter page. I am also a resident of Maui for all of my life, and I am a resident, a homeowner also of property in Kihei. We own a home, a 3-bedroom home, and a 2-bedroom home. Now, I've been told that we're crazy to rent our 3-bedroom home for $1,400 and our 2-bedroom home for $800. And I believe on this island, the rental market has just gotten crazy. I've worked with many in my job with United Way that could not afford. They were living in their cars because they could not afford, and they could not be with family anymore because it was too stressful. So the family would ask them to leave, and the only option they had was to live in their car, live on the beach. We cannot be having this on this island. We're in this island, we need to take care of each other. That's the way we grew up in the plantation. There was no such thing as homelessness in the plantation. We took care of each other. And we should go back to that. This is an opportunity for us to help those, our kapuna who took care of us, our legacy. And I would want to see that we have affordable housing for those who deserve it, for those that came before us. Now, Catholic Charities, and I have worked with Catholic Charities off and on through the years, the affordable housing they have is going to remain affordable for 61 years. And that's quite a long time to be doing that, to make a commitment to this community for 61 years. 164 units. And that's not even enough for this island. We're just in need of more affordable housing. And it breaks my heart to see those who are without housing, who cannot afford housing. And working people, intact families living on the beach. And I've done projects with them. I ask you to consider passing this amendment today, if not sooner, to allow this to move forward, because we have developers, and we need to encourage these developers with this tax credit to build these affordable housing. It's such a need in our community. And
3 minutes.
I think you can see that, so I urge you to pass this amendment. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Members, any clarification, questions, or further discussion for the testifier? Now, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Our next testifier.
The next testifier is Albert Perez, testifying on agenda item HHT 21.
Hello, council members. Good afternoon. Albert Perez, Maui Tomorrow. I'm testifying on HHT 21. So I'm also concerned about that section 2.96.100 that had the 30-day rental period. I think that's pretty short. I did notice that under 2.96.070, that there is a provision for the entire project. I believe that's how it works. In the event the owner or owner's representative does not maintain the required distribution of rentals in the income groups, then they have to deposit the difference between the actual rent and the lower amount into the housing fund. That doesn't appear in Section 100. I think it should, one or the other or both. So I think that should be made clear. But I really question whether the department in its current configuration will be able to track and enforce this with every landlord. I don't know how that's going to happen. I have some other thoughts about that, but I'll spare you for now. I'm really concerned about credits in projects that I've seen, and I don't have a time on here, by the way, so I don't know how long I've taken. The credits, if they build homes outside of a particular project, can gentrify communities. And this is what we saw in the McKenna area. We were able to work with the developer there recently in a settlement, and some of the settlement terms, which we'll be publicizing more. One of them is that in addition to the 60 affordable homes that will be on the resort property, that the workforce housing, in addition, half of that is going to be on the resort property. And the rest of it was supposed to be in the community plan area, although we did let them use some of their old housing credits to build outside of that community plan area if they want. But we wanted to have local people back in the McKenna area, so that's why we pushed for that really hard. I think we need to admit that the market solution of just providing more housing is not going to work. There's a global demand for housing units on Maui, and there are 12 million millionaires around the world who would like to have a second home here. The last figure I heard was that 42% of the homes sold on Maui go to out-of-state buyers. So our people are competing against people from around the world, and that's why these projects that are actually only providing 7.5% of the total number that are truly affordable, they're not helping our situation that much. In the meantime, the other 92.5% are contributing to the sprawl that contributes to housing expenses. It makes housing more expensive and less affordable when we sprawl. So it would make much more sense for the council to supplement the Affordable Housing Fund by adopting developer impact fees, and there's a study for that already, and using that money to pay for infrastructure and help the developers who actually want to build truly affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Members, any questions or clarification for the testifier? If not, next testifier.
Chair, the last testifier is Tom Blackburn Rodriguez. He will be testifying on HHT 21 and HHT 22.
Chair and members of the Housing and Human Services and Transportation Committee. Well, you face a very complex problem, and many of the subjects that we discuss when it comes to affordable housing always begin with the word of no, we can't. So I would encourage you to approach this topic with a yes, we can attitude, knowing that no piece of legislation, no solution is perfect, but we have to dream big. We have to try and do what we can do and enter upon a strategy in which all of the options are exercised. Go Maui has testified previously. My name is Tom Blackburn Rodriguez. I'm testifying on behalf of Go Maui. We've testified on this issue previously, and there are concerns. They're valid to discuss. But it is very important that we do not stop trying to make progress. Whether we can make large steps or small steps, we cannot fear making a mistake means that we do nothing at all. So we would like to encourage you to do all that you can do. We'd like to thank the committee, the council, the mayor, and of course the Director of Housing and Human Concerns, and a terrific staff. Everyone's working hard, collaboratively. Is this legislation perfect? No. No legislation is. But does it move us closer to our goal, which has remained so elusive? Yes, it does. And I would urge the council, Go Maui would urge the committee and the council, take this step. Do not, as my mother used to say, do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any clarifications for the testifier? If not, thank you for being here, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you very much. And hey, have a great day at the fair.
Chair, there is no one else waiting to testify.
So thank you. Is there anyone else in the gallery or the district offices who would like to testify? I guess not. So members, if there are no additional testifiers at this time, after I'd like to close testimony. No objections? Thank you. So we're going to turn to our first agenda item, members. And our first agenda item is HHT-4. So members, this is one-stop shop for processing permits. Members, the chair's intent is to discuss and have an update from the Department of Public Works on the one-stop shop for processing permits and the building plans application report. We have representatives from the Department of Planning, Fire and Public Safety and Water Supply. They've also joined us to give an update on their permit review process and comment on the one-stop shop initiative. The updated report includes information on the department's compliance with the building code review process. And then all members, you should have a copy of the report that we will be referring to. With that, I'd like to, at this time, turn over to the Public Works Director for the opening comments and a status update, and we'll follow through after from the other departments for an update. Oh, with us too is Mr. Will Spence from Planning. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Good.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair, members, non-voting members. David Good here, Director of Department of Public Works. And Chair, I don't know how much you want me to go into initially. I could start by just kind of framing the current process, perhaps.
Yes.
So as relates to building permits, which is what the one-stop shop idea refers to, is the processing of building permits. And so all building permits are submitted to our department, to the Development Services Administration, and the applicant would submit a number of sets of plans, which we then route concurrently to a number of departments. And the number of departments varies by the permit, depending on what type of project is proposed, if it's commercial or residential, and where it's located. So it could be in the SMA or not. It could be in a sewered area or not. And a variety of other zoning classifications would inform us where the permit or the application is reviewed by various agencies. Under our building code, which we've talked about in the past, but we passed in 2012, council passed in 2012, included a provision for the first time in Maui County that the agencies that review building permit applications have 30 days to respond back to the applicant with either an approval or comments, which would indicate what needs to be changed in the plans or what needs to be further provided by the applicant so that they can review it in conformance with that agency's codes. The idea behind that was at the time we had concerns from the county side that a lot of the plans we received were incomplete. There were concerns on the private sector side that the waiting time was so long, they just want to get something in. So clearly, our commitment was, we'll get you comments quicker, but you need to get us better plans. So I think overall that's worked. And what our department does at DSA is just about every month we produce an internal report that we send to all the departments to let them know how they're doing on the 30-day clock. And so that report takes a while to develop because we're dealing with some 25-year-old software. In fact, my staff gave me I think it's a 5-page memo on how to do the report. It takes one person like 4 days to do it. So we're looking forward to the new system that can hopefully just produce that at a push of a button. But we send that report out to the managing director, who then sends it to all the departments. And so departments like Mr. Spence to my left, or Carol's department, fire, water, they get the report and they get to see how they're doing. So it's an informative management tool. And initially, the numbers varied, but typically most of the departments are coming very close to meeting that requirement. There are times when there's staffing issues and one agency or another can't make it. But overall, I think the results have been better in terms of the public getting served by that process. So should I continue on? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Go through your whole presentation before
All right.
we open up the floor for discussion.
So the last report we had produced for the 30-day review was back in July, and I think that is in your packet. And the numbers were mostly in the high 80s, low 90s. Fire department, the chief can speak to it, but I think they had some staffing issues. And that month in July, we received 224 applications for building permits. And that varies all over the place, from new homes, remodels, new commercial buildings, a flagpole. It's a real wide variety of applications. So I thought it was a good idea, and I did it myself, because I thought it would be good to inform the director as to what type of permits were applied for that month. So my goal was to actually go through all the permits and develop a summary so we can kind of see what's happening, how long things are taking, and what the idea of is the one-stop shop could it make sense. And it was taking me some time, so I got to the first 100. So I thought, 100 out of 224 is probably a pretty good sample. And so I finished that actually yesterday, and I handed that out, or staff handed that out at the beginning of the meeting. So you have this report that has a lot of colors on it. And if I can walk you through that, what I did was I looked at those 100 applications. So this is just the first application that came in July, the first 100. And so it's got the application number, the date that we got it, generally what project it is, the valuation of the project, its current status, whether it's approved or not, and then various notes. And then I color-coded it based on whether it's commercial or residential, and then what type of residential. So if you look at the top box, the first 132 were commercial. And again, that varied from a flagpole, really there was a flagpole, to a new commercial building in Kulamalu. And of those 32, 28% have been approved as of yesterday. Every single one of them had comments. No one was waiting for comments from an agency. So if they weren't approved, they had comments and they needed to deal with them. So we were waiting for the applicant at that point. On residential, and I have another category for ag farm dwellings. If we just jump to ag farm dwellings, this is a first farm dwelling, a second farm dwelling. There was 12 applications. There's maybe a couple remodels in there. Only one, or 8%, had been approved. And they all had comments, all from generally the planning department says, where's your farm plan? Are you complying with your farm plan? That was the general comments on those. And so you can see those are well scrutinized and slow to deliver. But in any case, we're waiting for the applicant to respond. As far as the residential goes, I think this is what speaks to the one-stop shop, and also because it came out of the idea for affordable housing. Where's the building permit process in delivering affordable housing? How does this fit in the process, and how it can be improved? There were 19 applications for demolitions and other non-habitable structures like a garage or a shed. Almost half of those had been approved. And again, this is what, a two and a half to 3 month time frame. New dwellings, there were 7. 2 had been approved. These were generally custom homes, ranging in value, I think, from maybe $300,000 to as high as $3 million. That was the ag dwelling. We had an ag dwelling for $3 million. About $1 million, I think, was the highest one. And then we had 19 applications for new dwellings using design registration. So I think I've spoken about design registration previously here, Chair. Design registration is where you have a house plan that's already pre-approved. You bring in that pre-approved design registration on a piece of land. Say, I want to put, let's call it the Pikaki model. I'm going to put the Pikaki model on lot 25. Here's lot 25. Here's where the house sits. Here's what the driveway looks like. 19 of those were submitted. All 19 were approved. And it approved in from 7 to 11 weeks. 4 of them, again, this is a random sample. I just started from 1st of July. 5 of them, were for a new affordable home in Haiku in Pauela. And they were approved in 7 weeks because they had the design already pre-approved. There's 11 remodels or additions. Only about a quarter of those had been approved. Typically, they would have questions from the water and or fire department, usually on fixture count and things like that. And there's a number of permits, where they hadn't complied with the building code yet, so our department was waiting for something. Sometimes there's retaining walls that triggered grading permits, and we were waiting for a grading permit. In every case, the ones that hadn't been approved, all but one, no one was waiting for an agency comment. They had the comments. It's just their response to the comments. And that can vary. It can vary from there was no good response, it's probably unbuildable, right? They want a 100-foot steeple or something, to trying to figure it out, or things happen. Maybe they had something else going on and they just couldn't get to it. There's a lot of reasons why responses come in at different speeds. So what struck me was that the design registration process clearly works. And we have over 100 pre-approved designs, Chair, that an architect would come in and have it reviewed. They pay a fee for that. When they come in and do the building permit, it's actually a reduced fee because it's design registration. We've already looked at it. And the routing is much simpler, and they're just looking at the where it sits on the land. So clearly that process works. It works really well. Most affordable housing projects would have that, if it's single family, would be using that type because they're not going to build custom homes. They're going to offer a couple models, maybe a reverse, and using the design registration process by getting that pre-approved early in the project timeline makes a heck of a lot of sense. In my opinion, the 7 to 11 weeks that this particular batch took, these 19, is a reasonable amount of time. I've done a lot of building permits personally. I've done affordable housing projects. I know in that 7 to 11 weeks, there's a lot of other things that need to happen, including getting a contract with a contractor, ordering materials, make sure your subs can arrive, making sure the homeowner who's buying it can actually, the loan's going to close. So there's all these other things going on in the background that you need time to catch up and get ready, so you can come in and pick up the building permit. So when I looked at it, I thought, well, if we did a one-stop shop, what would we be looking at? Would we be looking at commercial? Would we be looking at ag? Would we be looking at the affordable housing projects? I mean, what in the process would we do? How would we get the state there? Because some of our permits go to DOE because they have a DOE fee. Some go to DLNR. I think it's near conservation. And of course, if there's not sewered, we send it to Department of Health for their septic review. I don't see I don't see any of the state agencies manning a one-stop shop. I'd be very surprised. And then, of course, if we had it, where would it physically be? How many people would be there? Would probably have to send 3 or 4 people to handle the different disciplines within planning. So other than getting maybe those 30-day comments in a slightly shorter time frame, we're still going to rely on the applicant to respond. So I was surprised at the. This was a good exercise for me, Chair. Personally, I'm glad I did it. I got really good at using KivaNet again, but the data just kind of leapt off the page for me, and so I felt the design registration was working, and I'm not sure where the one-stop shop would work, nor I think its staffing is going to be problematic.
Mr. Hokama. Thank you, Mr. Good.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Good, we appreciate your update, your comments. When an application is submitted, does it go through a Department 1? Then unless Department signs off, then it goes to Department 2. But unless Department 1 moves, Department 2 never sees the permit? Or does every department that has to sign off get the application at the same time and they can do their own independent review and sign off?
Yes, Chair. Mr. Okama, it's the latter. Everybody gets it simultaneously.
Okay, so water isn't waiting for fire, fire is not waiting for planning, vice versa, right? Everybody's reviewing on their own regarding their requirements.
If that's generally correct. I have seen a couple instances, because water and fire codes sometimes overlap, there may be an instance where there's a note that says, water to sign off after fire, but they've reviewed it concurrently. But whatever the project is, usually it's commercial, would require that kind of a sign off.
Yeah. And just so we can appreciate the difficulty that departments have, when you're telling the applicant you need better plans, you mean their licensed people are not submitting appropriate documentation? Those with licenses, whether they're an architect or an engineer, they're not submitting appropriate documents? That's what you're telling us today? Those licensed people are not fulfilling their jobs?
Mr. Good.
I don't know if I'd use appropriate, but incomplete, or...
Which means it cannot be processed if it's incomplete, right?
It depends on what it is. Sometimes it may meet the building code, but they didn't submit the septic plans. So DOH says, submit us septic plans. Or maybe they need the water fixture calculations. Or sometimes they miss it on the building plans, and they don't have the windows aren't sized correctly for emergency egress. So it does vary. It's pretty rare to have one that just flies through the first time everyone's approved. Usually see 1 or 2 comments.
Mm-hmm. No, we're just trying to understand why, because we don't update codes every year. So it's not like there's a new electrical code for 16 that's different from 17, and 18's proposal is totally different again. It stays for a while, the codes.
Right.
Okay? And then you get mostly the same consultants. The good ones get a lot of work. So I don't understand. They kind of submit what you need on the initial application. And hearing that you say they're not completed or sufficient for you to perform, I mean, what the hell are they getting paid as professionals then? Well, that's the person who pays the bill needs to ask that question, Chair. But I'm just surprised hearing this coming from so-called licensed people that are professionals. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else has any questions for the director? Ms.
Chair,
King.
thank you. Mr. Good, wasn't there a time when they were doing either weekly or monthly kind of one-stop shop? I was told, I think, in the mayor's lounge, and then people could come in and the tables would be set up and all the departments would be there. I think I was told it lasted something like 6 or 8 months. And why did we start it and why did we stop it? Is there a chance to try to replicate that again?
Director.
Sure. Yeah, that was set up through the managing director's office and the mayor's office. There's a early on in the administration, put together what they call PPIT, Permit Processing Improvement Team, to look at all facets of permitting, not just building, but and Randy Piltz, given his experience in the construction industry, took on a lot of the issues that people would bring to the mayor's office, and so it was an opportunity to get all the agencies there, and people would come in, and it was interesting because a lot of the folks that came in were homeowners, but they had hired an architect or an engineer, right? And so they didn't understand why they had to do something. And so when they actually got a chance to sit down and talk to someone, which, by the way, they can do at any time. I mean, they can call our folks and set up an appointment. And so I think what happened is over time, we got less and less people showed up. But in any case, anytime there's an agency comment, I can try to speak for all the departments here. Our doors are always open. They can always call either our office or with staff to work out whatever the issue might be in that particular department.
Is Mr. Pilt still in that capacity? Shouldn't he be here when we're discussing this? I mean, isn't that one of his duties to track the permits and try to push them along or shepherd them? But there was somebody in the mayor's office that's supposed to be doing that.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for the mayor's office and who's staffed for what, but I know Randy's still there, and he deals with some of the thornier ones that come along and tries to help them out. I know over time he's learned that he has to educate folks, what the process is. But it's there's always going to be applications. I mean, we get almost a couple thousand a year. So there's always going to be applications that come along that don't fit super nicely in whether it's the zoning code or the building code or the fire code. And it may come down to interpretations of code. So I think he assists in those areas.
Okay, so that's outside of what you're doing then, or in addition to what you're doing?
Yeah, he's handling more of the special cases, or there might be a big project where the mayor's office is supportive of and want to assist and move things along so he can help push things along, like a new hospital or something, a big addition to a school or something like that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions for Director Good? Or, well, we have the Planning Department and we have the Department of Water Supply Director, as well as the Fire and Public Safety. Do you have any comments, Mr. Spence or Mr. Taylor, in regards to your process and what you look at for one stop?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like the idea of being able to walk into one room and have all the departments there and being able to walk in with a roll of plans and walking out the other side, with the building permit in hand. It's sometimes, for simple things, yeah, I think we could probably do that. For some of the things that, like David Good was saying, not everything fits comfortably within our codes. That's going to be really hard to do. And I would hate to take people in to go with their idea that they're going to be able to do this and then just to be turned away because of some issue. The primary thing for us in improving, two things help us improve our service to the community. One is, and primarily it's personnel. You look at the statistics over the last number of years, and they were pretty bad at one point. And over the last couple years, and that is largely reflective of we've not been able to retain personnel. We've had people get sick and not come to work, not being able to come to work for months, people retiring, those kinds of things. And but over the last year and a half or even 2 years, you start to see improvements. And we were aware of our really poor performance over this time. There's, we make no bones about it. But since then, we have improved quite a bit, and that's a lot of thanks to the personnel we've been able to hire. They're very enthusiastic, they're efficient, they're really on their game, and the whole morale and the work environment has improved, and that's a result of the camaraderie between the employees themselves as well as the leadership within that division, with John Rapaz and now with Mr. David Rotz. So things have improved a lot, and we're up to 98% compliance with the 30-day review. The couple of things that I think are going to improve are the timeliness of our review. One, I keep talking about how old our zoning code is. If we can make our zoning code simpler, if we can, when I say simpler, perhaps I mean clearer, we can, and we do some things internally with through that code for our own processes, I think we're going to find much greater efficiencies. I also think, I think all the council members here and all the members in the gallery are aware of the Desert project to get digital zoning online. Instead of us spending hours checking individual zonings, that's going to be available to the general public online, and we won't have to do those kinds of checks. So that's going to free up a lot of resources to do more things like reviewing building permits and zoning compliance for those permits, rather than simply, checking what is their zoning and their community plan, et cetera. So for the things that wouldn't maybe not fit in completely into a one-stop shop, a lot of times we run into things with we start reviewing a building permit and we'll go, oh, well, there was a district boundary amendment condition from the Land Use Commission that affects this. Or, oh, there was a condition of zoning that the council put on it way back when. And so those kinds of things also slow down our review, and that sometimes, we just tell people, hey, you've got to change this or that. So that has an effect on our review of permits. So that's, Madam Chair, I think that pretty much summarizes our conclusions with this. It's something I would love to see. I don't know if it would be for the simple things, I think it would be wonderful. If we can do simple SMA reviews and those kinds of things. For the more complex things, that is going to take more than just one stop. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, any comments or addition to all this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd echo what the Public Works Director and the Planning Director say for my department. Staffing, simple things tend to be quick, more complicated things. As we have better training, we can do things faster, similar to what you've heard from there. We have a few unique circumstances. When we review things, we're not primarily looking for code compliance. Plans come in. We don't have a lot to say about what they're building. What we're interested in is how is it going to impact our existing system operation and the neighbors. So we're doing a system integration analysis. That is not a review of the plans against a checklist. It's an engineering study of how our system works, and if this thing is built, what will be the impacts to our system. That is very difficult to do in real time. just earlier this week, something that looked relatively simple came in, and staff decided the only way to really see how this would work is to send field staff out to take pressure readings, along a mile of pipeline to get how the pressure fluctuations work to see how this project would impact it. So every time we review something, there's some level of engineering determination of our system. And it's almost impossible to do that in real time with a one-stop shop. Also, just from the public perspective, a lot of times people come in thinking what they want is a building permit. They're saying, look, I have this lot, maybe I even have a water meter, and I just want to build this thing. And the analysis shows that the infrastructure fronting their street is not adequate for that. So it's not that the building permit's an issue. They now need off-site improvements. And the building permit itself is not an issue for us. It's that the off-site improvements become the project. And what you hear people talk about is, well, I just wanted a building permit and the water department has me tied up for my building permit. The building permit's easy. It's the off-site improvements that become this other animal. Tying that into something Member Okama said about professionals, a lot of the owner builders come in thinking, oh, my brother-in-law is going to build me a house or an extension. They don't even have a civil engineer. They don't want to hire a civil engineer. It's not within their budget. And when all of a sudden we're telling them on our first permit review, you need to do some improvements in the street, maybe 200 feet of pipeline and et cetera, you need a civil engineer. They weren't geared up for that. And all of a sudden the project becomes a lot more complicated than they thought it was because it becomes a civil engineering project, not a building permit process. So we also have this added complexity that a lot of times what the applicant is expecting, a vertical building permit, is not the issue, and they all of a sudden have a civil engineering project on their hands that they were not really excited about. So we have all of that thrown in there too, but again, the thing I'd ask you to remember for both us, I know wastewater is not here, but even Maui Electric, we're really doing system integration analysis, not code compliance review, and that adds a whole nother layer to our reviews.
Thank you. Mr. Hockey, do you have any comments, any addition?
Chair, council members, thank you. I know in this last report, the percentages for us were pretty low. And mainly that was due to personnel, lack of personnel, change of personnel. For the most part, we want to be, as far as the 30-day report, 100%. At least get, if the permit's not approved, at least get some type of comments out to the applicant so they know which direction to pursue and get their permit approved. But our poor showing on this this last one was due to personnel changes. As far as the one-stop shop, I would have to agree with the directors that on the simple things, it would be a good idea. But on the harder projects, it may not work good. As far as affordable projects, if you wanted to set up the one-stop thing with all the departments and address the affordable projects, I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Members, any questions or to further this discussion with any of the departments? Councilmember King.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm looking at this document that shows the graph for July, and it's hard to know unless there's a comparison with previous months. It's hard to know what the advancements, which ones are improving, which departments are actually improving over previous months. So, which would really inform us as to how effective a one-stop shop might be. But I do want to say that if there was a way to do them, like even monthly or every 2 months or something, and get all of the simple projects off the books, so that those things could go out the door quicker, and we could spend the time working on the ones that are more complicated. Maybe that would be a way to do it. It doesn't have to be every week, and maybe not even every month, but for someone who just wants to, put a toilet in their ohana or something, and they have to wait for someone else who's putting in a hospital wing or something like that. That's, those kinds of things are really frustrating. And also, I do agree that that we might want to look at doing something like this for the affordable housing projects or affordable rentals that people are trying to put in. But I would like to see if we have any, I don't know if we have any other information from 6 months ago and, last year. I mean, that would kind of help us see where we're at, how much improvement has been made in these different departments over previous, that we've been hearing that there has been improvement, but all we see is what's here in July.
So we can make note to request a more comparative kind of data, so we can do the comparison and see how we've improved or gone down, I think, for all of the departments at this point. This is to initiate the conversation and to try and identify if there are issues. But we've also expended so far in budget into our MAPS appropriation. And I think that's what Mr. Good talks about or makes mention, that there's some new technology that's coming out of the, what is it, almost $1 million appropriation. And, for that, and hopefully we'll be able to get clearer reports and everybody can go online. But I don't have the IT people here to explain it because I don't want to bring them on until we know what the dates for implementations are, because we've been hearing a lot of talks about maps. The other questions I have, logistically, we talk about shortage of personnel for certain departments, and if we were to develop a one-stop center on a regular basis, would that mean we will need additional personnel, or we would utilize existing personnel? Departments, can you sort of clarify in your mind what that would entail?
Madam Chair, that's a hard question to answer right now. I think we would have to explore what kind of structure, organizational structure such a shop would have, as far as, and I guess mostly which permits would go there and which ones wouldn't. So all the departments have said simple permits could go through that. We would have to look really hard to see which permits those would be. And as I recall, I spoke to the acting director at City and County. They, at the floor of the Fosse building, they have a shop like this, and they said something similar to that. They can process some things there, but not all. So we would have to explore what would be considered simple or not, and that would help us determine if we need more personnel or not. Certainly, ideally, if you're going to, say if we put one planner down there to check plans, that person would have to be well-versed in the zoning code, the flood code, SMA, perhaps some shoreline things, being familiar with how to look up, district boundary amendment conditions, council conditions on zoning, all those things. So we're not talking about a junior person sitting down at such a shop. There would have to be a fairly well-established, knowledgeable planner to do that.
Any other comments? Mr. Taylor, looks like you want to jump in.
Dave Good here. I don't have a whole lot more to add from what Will said. You definitely would need somebody who's pretty senior and some backup. That person's unavailable. And And given our permit volume, I mean, for us currently, because we track this as one of our performance measures, we're currently reviewing single-family residential new homes in 9 days, residential alterations in 7 days, commercial TI, tenant improvements in 5 days, and other commercial in 10 days. So if I take someone out, those numbers might go up to handle the other smaller projects. So I think for us, we're actually pretty well staffed, and we have all our folks have been there a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have to look at it.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I've heard sort of two ideas of what the one-stop shop is. One of it was, you know, we're approving things right there. And what Member King seemed to be alluding to was what we did in the mayor's office, which was really early informational consultation. And depending on which that is, it would affect the staffing. If it was informational consultation, and we could have somebody who does their normal work in a different place and they're there when people come in. If we're going to be processing things right there, it really depends on how many people walk in the door. It's kind of like getting your car to go in to get oil change and tune-up and things. You know, I always go first, and it's a one-stop shop. But by the time I'm leaving, people are being told to leave their cars all day. You know, by noon, people are told, you know, we got to leave it overnight. So as soon as you fall behind, it's not going to be a one-stop shop. If it's just simply early consultation, you know, where people come in saying, well, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? What are my issues? That's something that either being together or even having some new position that is generally knowledgeable about all the departments who can help somebody, here's what you have in front of you. That could probably be one-stop shop. But the idea of processing in real time is going to backlog as soon as you have more people there than you can process in real time. So I would be hesitant to think that we would possibly be able to process in real time unless there's an army of people there, because as soon as you fall behind, you'll never catch up. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Councilmember
Thank you.
King?
Well, you know, what I was told that was, I didn't realize it was just informational, but that it wasn't a permanent site where everybody kind of sat and waited. It was done it was done periodically, and so people were able to get through there who had been waiting a long time. And that's probably what allowed it to, when people stopped coming, allowed it to you know, just kind of dissipate. But you know, I would think it would be dependent on backlog, on how much backlog there is if you're going to try to do something like that. None of the information I have tells me how much backlog there is. It's just, you know, how many, you know, reviews we're doing within 30 days. But you know, obviously, if there's not a backlog, then there's not a need to do this. But if there is a backlog, and especially if it's on the simpler types of projects, then, you know, maybe it's a periodic thing that happens once a month or once every couple months, and then get more people through there that can be processed in a one-stop shop. But I don't see it as something that has to entail. And when I talked to Randy Piltz, and I talked to Keith Regan about this early on in the year, that it wasn't something where they hired people just to do this. They just got everybody together in a room, you know, once a month or something, and got some of these projects through, and then did it again. So it wasn't like somebody was just sitting there. This is what I was told. It wasn't just like somebody was sitting there the whole time waiting for someone to walk in the door.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to be clear, at these workshops, if you want to call them that we had in the mayor's office, I mean, I was there. I don't think anyone signed off on any permit there. I believe that what happened is people came in and said, here's my project. We gave them advice. Here's how we'll look at it. This is what you need to do. But we didn't review and approve. I don't think any of the departments reviewed and approved anything there. I think we gave advice, and we had different tables with the different departments. Maybe Mr. Good or Mr. Spence has a different recollection, but I don't recall that we did any approvals there. Again, it was advice about what to do next at a senior level.
So it sounds like more like a review team that was put together to help the applicant go through the process. What you got to do is.
So, but is it not possible to take some of these simpler projects you're talking about and get them processed in that kind of a setting, or is there just too much to do for, if you had all these different departments meet once a month in this, in a setting like that? Is it even possible?
So does it make more sense for complex? Because if you look at the 1 month's report, even if you can't compare with what was in June or March,
right.
The results are quite impressive that they have been able to have permits approved and what have you. So anyway, we'll make note of that to try and see if the one-stop shop would more or less be like a review team in preparation for the applicant, if that's what I hear you. Members, any other questions?
Sure. If all the voting members are done.
Ms. Cochran.
Thank you, Chair. And so, yeah, I know past Councilmember Don Couch was very fond of bringing up this during the subject matter, the one-stop shop concept in San Jose that he had personally visited. And around the same time, I had personally visited Marin County, who was setting up a one-stop shop concept. And it kind of looked like what we see right here: fire, plant, water, public works. I mean, you all are kind of set up right now as that one-stop shop, actually. And it was rolling out. And they, I've yet to go back and see how it's done since then. This has been a couple years now down the road, but I know former Councilmember Couch experienced it in San Jose. And then I recall those permitting open houses that were done upstairs through the mayor's lounge. And it was, people could come in, and all you folks were there, the directors of the respective departments, and assisting people with, from commercial to residential permits, wondering if your project was meeting county requirements and things, and also giving advice of the permit process for the individuals and assisting them through the process that way. So trying to answer questions ahead so they can come back in full, with all their information to get the process rolling smoother that way. But I understand, Chair, that you have larger projects, smaller things that can literally go here. Can you just look, stamp here? But others, of course, are going to be more detailed and take more time. But if we could set up something to address the smaller ones, sort of get them off the stack of permits that are piling up on the desk, and then spend more time vetting through the heavier, more detailed, challenging projects. So I'm still 100% for this concept, Chair, and also discuss this during the TIG process too. So thank you for bringing it up, and looking forward to further discussion on it. But I think it has been successful in other municipalities.
So I just want to add, members, we're at bare quorum, so raise your hand if you have to leave, and I'll call for a recess. So if we have no further discussion, if there are no objections, I will defer this item. Okay. Thank you. Take a 5-minute recess, please. Thank you, members. I'd like to now reconvene our Housing, Human Services, and Transportation Committee meeting. Our next item on the agenda, HH2, Paren 1, amendments to the Residential Workforce Housing Policy, proposed amendments relating to credits, restrictions for rental units, and vacancies in residential workforce housing units, HHT-2, Paren 1, Paren. The committee is in receipt of the following: County Communication 16-132 from myself, Stacy Crivello, relating to amendments to the Residential Workforce Housing Policy. Correspondence from the Director of Housing and Human Concerns dated August 8, 2016, transmitting a proposed bill amending Chapter 2.96 relating to the Residential Workforce Housing Policy, and correspondence dated August 10, 2017, from the Department of Corporation Counsel transmitting a revised proposed bill entitled A Bill for an Ordinance amending Chapter 2.96 Maui County Code relating to residential workforce housing policy. The purpose of the revised proposed bill is to amend Chapter 2.96 Maui County Code as it relates to Section 2.96.050A relating to credits, Paren 2, Section 2.96.070 relating to residential workforce housing restrictions for rental units, and Paren 3, Section 2.96.100, Paren D, relating to vacancies in residential workforce housing units. The committee may consider whether to recommend passage of the revised proposed bill on first reading with or without further revisions. The committee may also consider the filing of the correspondence and other related action. County Communication 16-132 and correspondence, Housing, Human Concerns, and revised bill from Corp Council. So, members, the revisions to the proposed bill reflect our last discussion on the item from August 17, 2017. Housing Department, Director Ryman, would you like to start off the discussion with an overview and comments on the revised bill?
Chair, before we start, can I don't see that on Granicus. I see the last revised bill was from before that date, so was August 10th. But you were saying since August 17th?
We'll have a hard copy for you at the moment.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, what was the date of the bill we're working off of, or the communication?
August correspondent, I'm sorry. The actual bill is dated I think August 8th.
No, I have that.
August 10th.
Yeah,
August 10th. You have that in Granicus?
I have that on Granicus.
Okay.
Oh, Chair, I have that one, but I thought you said that there were changes as of the meeting on the 17th of August.
Actually, after we do the overview and talk about it, you'll realize that there's really not much revisions or any specific revisions. Yeah, I apologize. Okay. Yeah. Director Ryman.
Thank you, Chair. So as you all know, the primary intent of the changes is to allow for rental credits. I won't go into details as this is, we've been before this body before, but I do want to point out that the question of demand came up in one of the testimonies. So based on the 2016 housing demand study, in the next 10 years, we need to build 13,949 units. And I'd like to inform everyone that over 51% of this demand is for those at the 60% and below of AMI. So of the 14,000 units needed, over 7,000 are needed for 60% and below. Once again, I won't go over the details of all of these amendments as we've been through them before, but we are here to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you.
Mr. Uyoka, do you have any comments or explanation for the amendments? I know we went over this in the last meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, just a reminder, the primary focus of this bill is just to make sure that there are credits available for rental units, residential workforce housing unit rental units, to be equal to the for sale units. And it goes through some requirements on the process of how the rentals should work moving forward, the deed restrictions, and various requirements. Available for any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the Corporation Counsel or our Housing Director? Mr. Hokama.
Thank you very much for bringing up this revised proposal, Chair. I like where you're trying to go with this proposed legislation regarding the rentals. And I understand one of the testifiers' comments about trying to be perfect. But for me, the county always gets bite in the butt when we don't take care of the details. Okay. So for me, part of the concerns that I have with this revised thing is on, let's start from the page 1, the credits. For the department or Clerk Council, I don't have a problem with this 100%. I like that. And it's limited up to 75% of the total number eligible units, so I'm fine with that. I am thinking of finding a way to, so that it doesn't become such a speculative thing on the credit. I am thinking of things that would make sense to limit the credit. So should it be part of the cost or a percentage regarding the cost of the unit that the credits are earned from as one way to limit the credit? I know in the past we had different types of standards, but I'm also looking at limiting the credit to be used either in the same income bracket or if it makes sense for us to see how does it make sense for a low income credit to support and reduce the subsidy of a moderate unit? I'm not sure. But you got to show us that that's what's going to happen. And the last one on the credits is I'm not into open-ended eternal credits. I think there should be an expiration date of that credit, especially if it's in this county. Okay? I'm not into the state handing credits all over the place that impacts us here on Maui. So you want a credit in this county, you have to use it within a reasonable time frame or lose it. Okay, we want the units. Use the credit. If you only can hold it, that don't give us units. If you just want it to get a nice payoff on somebody else's project for your credit, then that's not what I'm into supporting. The other areas of concern I have is on page 3. Under the deed restrictions, this is kind of interesting because for the rental, it's, I think, more stringent than the fee simple. We're going to 30 years. But I find it interesting that we would put language to say that the right to purchase a property is at the value determined by the owner. Why wouldn't we say that we would agree to a value as determined by a mutual appraisal? Where both parties would agree to a appraisal or an assessment. Annual recertification, well, if the developer wants the credit, he better do the work to make sure he can comply and prove to us. That should be on the developer's responsibility, not the county's. They want the credit, not us. And then I have the same concern as someone that testified on page 5 of the proposed ordinance under number 6, Chair. That open market rental component of the affordable. I know we want the units filled, but I would agree that if we have such a long waiting list of those looking for affordables or subsidized housing, how would we ever reach to take an open market applicant? And I'm assuming that if we do go open market, it'll be at the open market rental. That's the assumption. Would that be a good assumption, Mr. Uyoka?
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. This language was drafted to basically say whatever you charge, that's up to you as the landlord, but you're going to pay us the difference between the market or the rate that you're charging and whatever you are supposed to charge. So if you're supposed to charge $400 and you're charging $1,000, the $600 comes to the county for the Affordable Housing Fund. So it wouldn't really benefit the landlord to rent for, less. Thank you, or more, I should say.
Okay. Anything further, Mr. Hokama?
No, that's my areas of comment that I appreciate you allowing me to share, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember, Mr. Uyoka, before I call in Member King.
Thank you, Chair. Just to quickly address one of Mr. Hokama's concerns. Yeah, when we put the language in for the 30 days for the market rate rental, we are under the assumption that it should never happen. We were just asked by one of the developers that please give us that possibility for, there might be multiple reasons. We were told could be leases end at different times, maybe no qualified buyer or renters in that area. So it was just there as a safety measure. However, housing will be monitoring it to make sure there's not too much or not any, hopefully, cheating going on. But it was just in there as a safety measure for the developers of these projects to make it more attractive to actually build a low-income housing rental project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member King.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on just that last comment because I had a similar concern. I think it was brought up by a testifier, how difficult it's going to be to monitor that. If someone's able to charge whatever they want to charge, now you have to go and figure out how they figured that out. You have to make sure we're getting the difference back in the accounts it's supposed to be in. But if we get to a point where they're not able to fill these, then why are we giving credits? Because the whole idea of giving credits is to get more affordable units. So I think 30 days is too short a period of time myself to let them go to market. The other issue I had was on the length of time for this credit. And, usually in the energy industry, the credits are like for 5 years or for 10 years. If we're trying to get people to build affordable housing now, then perhaps we should look at this credit expiring in 10 years. Get your project on the books, because we're not looking to give credits 30 or 40 years down the road when we might not even need affordable housing. And if we still have this great need, then we can relook at it again at the sunset date. But to me, this is the urgency, and the urgency I heard in the testifiers was we need this now, and that's why there was so much support for it. But the open-endedness as far as this lasts forever does not speak to that urgency. So maybe we could consider making it a credit that sunsets in 10 years. I mean, we've seen this in the solar industry. They had a few years to get going, and we ended up with 100 solar companies within a very short period of time because that credit was going to expire. So that would be my, along with shortening, having a finite period of time where you could actually expend those credits to look at the actual credit program, not going beyond 10 years. Other than that, I like the deed restriction for 30 years. I would love it to be longer, and I'm glad that Catholic Charities is looking at 60 years for their affordable, but. That's one of my bigger concerns. I also want to reiterate the concern, and I think there was a broader discussion, Chair. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not. This is not a revised amendment. This is just the same bill we looked at before. So I'm going to express the same concern I had last time, and that was brought up by one testifier who talked about gentrification. And so I do have that concern that if we're giving these credits out to, two things. One, if we're giving these credits out one for one, that we're not necessarily going to get more affordable housing, because you're just one for one, you're paying it. So the only advantage I see is to make it a short period of time so we get a more affordable housing in a quick period of time. The other thing is the idea of allowing all these gated communities and all these high-end areas to just buy out their entitlements, and then having all the communities that have all the low-end, low-income housing existing in pockets that just become, for lack of a better word, kind of that's how the ghettos were created. Is just put them all in one area, and so I have that concern about this type of credit too. Is that and I don't know how to address it with this, because I do understand that we're trying to get something quickly. But again, if we're trying to get something quickly, let's put something in here that shows that urgency and says we want this to be done now, and that's why we're extending this credit. So those are my main concerns, and I have the same concerns because it's the same bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Department, any comments? Or I would think on probably a couple of things: how difficult would it be to monitor, and getting the project on the books, and then allowing it all in one area. Any comments on
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member King, for those questions. I'm trying to recall the comments that you made. Very good points. With regards to the monitoring issue first, obviously it's no small task, but we would have to set up a situation where I would envision getting rent rolls on a quarterly basis, and we would have to structure a spreadsheet that would be specific to each project, that would analyze what categories they're required to satisfy and for what terms. And we would monitor the rents that should be rented at and what they are being rented at. We're going to, hold them to it, and whatever it is that they're not meeting, then we're going to collect the difference and deposit to the Affordable Housing Fund. It will be challenging, but we feel, we're up to the task. We're fully staffed in our office now, and we have somebody who is assigned to monitor these types of things, so we feel that we have the capability to do that. With regards to the general questions that we're hearing on the credits, when this committee met and we made the revisions in December of 2014, some of them were specific to credits. What we tried to do was mirror the state credits as far as what their capabilities are and what advantages are to having them. And that's why we changed from having them be district and income category specific. That's how it's spelled out for the for sale credits currently in the bill. They follow under those particular parameters. So we just kind of wanted to follow suit and have the rental credits abide by the same restrictions that are currently approved, just for simplicity and clarity, so we didn't have two sets of rules for different types of credits in the same bill. So we're just following what's currently in the ordinance for the for sale credits. Thank you.
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. Just in regards to your last comment, Ms. King, regarding where the units are built, inclusionary versus not. Currently, the way 2.96 is worded is you're not required to build the units within the same project. You can just do them in the same community plan area. So I'm not sure it would be a broader change than just this credit approach. So thank you.
So, Chair, if I may, so this is still going to require it being in the same community plan area?
Mr. Uyoka.
This is a little different because this is getting the credits. If you were going to actually build the units to satisfy 2.96, the units would have to be built in the same community plan area. As far as credits go, the way the credit section works for the for sale units right now, you could build them anywhere and use the credits anywhere in the county.
Okay, so that's exactly my concern. You could build them anywhere, you could use them anywhere, so that they're not necessarily even staying in the same community, much less the same neighborhood. So anyway, just so you understand, and I've seen this in other industries where, you can buy your credits for renewable energy, and then allows you to pollute as much as you want over here, and so that's my concern is, we're not getting, if we were getting 2 for 1, or, somehow we were getting twice as many affordable units as these credits we're giving out, maybe it would be worth the risk, but we're not even getting that. We're getting 1 for 1. So all we're doing is saying, if you build this affordable housing, we're going to give you a credit you can sell to somebody else, so they don't have to build that house somewhere else. So to me, the only advantage of even doing something like that is if we get this affordable housing built quickly, which we might be able to do if we were going to sunset this credit in 10 years, because then you won't be able to get it in 11 years. So you better build your housing now.
Mr. Uyoka, any comments?
Yeah, and I'm talking about sunsetting the entire credit program. That's what happens in the energy industry. Okay, so you get a credit. If you don't use it right, use it or lose it. Use it now or lose it later.
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I think I understand. Ms. King saying the credit program goes away in 10 years. I thought Mr. Hokama's point was he wanted the credit. If you get a credit today and you don't expend it on another project within 10 years, it's gone.
I believe that was his point. Okay, so I was making another point on top of that. So.
Mr. Uyoka, anything further to add? Do you see us adding that in? Explain that already.
Thank you, Chair. Two different concepts we could definitely work both into the bill. Yeah, I'm not sure. Mr. Okama's one, I think we could address. Would be an amendment to 2.96050. You would just probably likely add in another letter stating that credit shall expire within X amount of years of issuance. For Ms. King's proposal, it could be difficult to put that in, especially because we have existing credits floating around right now, and it'd be a section of this bill that would sunset. Not impossible, of course, but just more difficult. And just a reminder that oftentimes, as you guys have all seen with various projects, things take time to move forward. So even if you were to make it a 5-year sunset, if you were to pass this today, there's a possibility that a project might not even get its entitlements within 5 years. And that's the program. That's, not. Once you issue the credits, I understand, could expire in 10 years because that means it's built. We only give the credit once the unit's built and occupied. So at that point, it just makes the credits less attractive, but it's workable into the bill. I don't see a difficulty there. Thank you, Chair.
So, Mr. Uyoka, I want to have a clear understanding. Credits are not issued until project is built.
Thank you, Chair. For sales, they need to be built and sold with deed restrictions at residential workforce or at rates, affordable rates to quote unquote residential workforce housing unit buyers. The proposal for the for sale is you wouldn't get the credit until it's built and rented. Thank you, Chair.
So, Chair, my proposal, I didn't actually make a hard proposal, but my thought is that, it's sunset in 10 years. And so if you acquired the credits, you have however many years to use those, as long as you receive them within the lifespan of the program, which would encourage people who are building affordable housing to build now, to get on the projects and build it, because now is when we need it. And we could reassess the program in 10 years to see if we still need to extend it another 10 years or not. But this is a very typical thing that's done for tax credits in the energy industry. And it's because they've been short-term, like 5 years, or in my industry, 2 years, it spurred a lot of growth in those industries in a short period of time because people wanted to get on those credits. So that's the incentive to get it done quickly, because now is when we need it. Otherwise, we're just giving one for one, and to me, that's not adding anything to the inventory.
Any comments on that, Department or Mr. Uyoka? Did you want to propose an amendment to this bill?
When we get there, I would like to, yeah. Unless we have so many revisions that we send it back for.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, if we're going to do amendments on the floor today, I will. When we get to that point, I will. But I'm just waiting to hear what the rest of my colleagues.
Members will be leaving. One has already left, and we're probably going to end up with bare quorum. And it involves participation, I guess. For whatever reason, other members have other obligations. So, Mr. Uyoka, how may we fit in this amendment, or is this something that we can pursue passage and come back for amendments?
Chair, yeah, I'm not sure how comfortable the body is, but currently the bill in front of you just makes it an even playing field in a sense for rental credits. We could theoretically pass this today and come back in with a restriction amendments to 2.96050 relating to credits to further restrict them and have more discussion on that. In accordance with Mr. Hokama's suggestion. For Ms. King's suggestion, I guess somewhere in the bill we'd have to add in that in a separate bill that I guess the credit section would be repealed in X amount of years or on a certain date. But I do think you could pass this out today and make those other changes at a later date if the body's comfortable. Thank you.
Mr. Hokama.
Chair, thank you for being open on this subject. I think one thing that Mr. Uoka can assist us for the next meeting is tell us what may happen with the credits already given. Okay, Hawaiian Homes has, 400-something credits out there already, so can we put a sunset on those credits already provided by another agency?
By the state.
You know, so if he can maybe do the research and report back to us, that might be helpful. Plus, on the rental side, department, when does the rental actually become qualified? The first day the renter goes in, or after 3 months of being a renter in the unit, then it qualifies for the credit? Because, you know, I don't want to see somebody go in and after 1 month the renter's gone for whatever reason and then they still get on full credit. So how is this rental thing supposed to work? A minimal stay and then the credit kicks in, or as soon as they get one CO or whatever it is from the department, they get the credit before it's rented, but it's built?
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. Quickly, in regards to the existing credits, I believe there's approximately 42 state credits still out there. We can't affect those, unfortunately. There are 44 credits issued for 2.96. They were issued for 201H projects. Those are already issued. We'd have to check a lot further into what our legal rights would be to limit them now after the fact that they were issued. I'd say we're probably more restricted than on how we can treat those at this point, being that they have already been issued. That's for a total of 44 also. In regards to when the credits are issued, they should be issued when the unit is rented to an income qualified buyer, with the understanding, though, that for 30 years, that unit is deed restricted, except under those circumstances where they can't rent for 30 days, which we're hoping doesn't occur. And even if they do rent, the money goes into the Affordable Housing Fund. Thank you, Chair.
So just want to follow up, Chair, because, again, I just read a couple of times, but isn't there a component about month-to-month rentals? I was trying to understand the part about month-to-month in the ordinance proposal. You had something about month-to-month? Because I would say, for me, I expect them to sign at least a minimum 6-month or longer rental agreement to qualify for long-term rental.
Department?
So there will be one documentation that can be used to verify. So I'm trying to, where was it? I apologize, I read it, but you have a portion where I apologize for being there. I'll follow up on that, Chair, on my own time and not take the committee's time on that regarding the month-to-month concern.
Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, we can work with Mr. Okama on that directly. But in regards to, yeah, it should be for at least 6 months to follow the, not violate the short-term rental rules of the county. But yes, the department will be monitoring quarterly on rental rates to make sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. That's the restriction there. Thank you.
Okay. It's under letter E, page 4. Annual recertification, right in the middle. It says in the event that the lease is month-to-month and the tenant is no longer qualified. So I'm going to, how did you go to a month-to-month agreement then?
If I may, Chair.
Yes.
I believe that was in a former version of this, but the understanding there was after 6 months, my understanding is you can continue on the lease a month-to-month because the 6 months was satisfied, the 180 days. So after that, you could go month-to-month theoretically. I believe we were told that by someone in that business of rental. What's the word? Property management. Thank you.
So does that become a short-term rental since then all you guaranteed is 30 days?
My understanding is they already met they were in the unit for the 180 days.
Upfront.
Yeah, so it is, at that point, it did meet the long-term rental requirement, and after that, it can be month-to-month.
So it has to be a continuous, no break-in tenancy.
That is our understanding, yes. But, and again, that language has been deleted at this point. Thank you.
Member King.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I don't see where, I'm looking at the version you just handed me. I don't see where if there's anything about month to month. Is that, can you tell me? Okay, so nothing's in here about what you just talked about going to month.
Yes, Member King.
Okay. I have a question about the value of the credit, because we're trying to give credits to rental units. We give credits to affordable housing per housing unit, and we're trying to equate that with a rental unit. How does that value proposition equate, and how do you? I mean, what's the? So you're giving a credit of one rental unit that somebody else doesn't have to build as affordable when you do that?
Thank you, Chair. The credit concept, Member King, is the same as it currently is in the ordinance for the for sale portion. It's whatever the developer builds over and above their 25% requirement, they would receive a credit for. So they owe the 25% of the market rate units. That's the requirement. They only receive a credit if they do over and above that. And that's, so it's not technically like a one-for-one. They do have an upfront requirement they have to meet, and they only receive credits for anything built or rented over and above that.
Okay, but that credit is for a long-term affordable rental, and it's to be sold to another developer so that they don't have to build that long-term affordable rental. It's not so that they don't have to build a house. It just passes on to another rental project. Is that correct?
No.
We view, and Mr. Uyoka can correct me if I'm wrong, but rental credits or for sale credits, we view them, the way they're proposed on the bill is the same with our housing credits, and they all have the same, I guess, nature with regards to how they can be utilized and which units they can be used to satisfy. There's no differentiation between either a rental credit and a for sale credit. They all have the same capabilities and usage as far as what they're going to satisfy with regards to future housing.
Okay, so what you're saying is if I build 20 extra rental units, I can sell those to another developer who can say, well, you know, I'm supposed to build 30 affordable houses, but I'm only going to build 10?
Correct, because the net is zero. We've gotten the number of affordable housing units that we were required to get.
Okay, but yet you're going to allow them to go to market after 6 months. Or, I mean, market rate in the rental unit. I mean, so we're saying that if you've rented it long-term for 6 months, isn't that what I heard Mr. Hocamp
No,
say?
it's deed restricted for 30 years. That's the requirement.
You're allowing it to go to market rate after 30 days if you can't rent it out.
No, month-to-month lease, I believe, was the...
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. If they're unable to find affordable renter after 30 days of looking, and that'll have to be verified by the department, yes, the owner or management agency or whoever's renting the units could go to market for up to 12 months. After that, they have to start trying to get a affordable renter again.
Okay, but now you've got a unit that's at market, and you've gotten a credit for doing an affordable housing unit. I mean, you're not fulfilling that need of somebody who's out there looking for a place to live who's in that lower income bracket. But you're getting the credit for having done that.
Chair,
yes.
Thank you. It's a stopgap measure because for a lot of these other developers, the nonprofits, they're required under the terms of their low-income housing tax credits and various things to always rent to certain income groups. For those people who are actually doing a market rate project and they do have their 25% of the units in their project, if they were to have vacancies for longer periods, it'll probably hurt them financially where it might kill the project even. That's why that's in there, just a stopgap measure, and it's for 12 months.
But they're getting that credit, so that credit that they can sell should cover that risk.
And This was the proposal. We spoke with the developers. My understanding is building these rental projects it's very difficult to pencil. They need all the help they can get, from what I understand. But it was just a proposal we have in here. If it's this body's decision whether or not they want to stick with it. But again, it's a stopgap measure. The department will monitor and make sure it's not abused, or try their best to make sure it's not abused. And it's just there to help out the developers to make sure that they don't have to potentially sit on a unit for longer than 1 month, as expenses come in for them also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make my proposed change amendments when the time comes.
Right. So, what I understand, it's more the nonprofits that will be, I guess, raising their hands and trying to find financing to build and develop this type of affordable units and would qualify them for these credits, rental credits, so that they can pencil out. And I doubt very much you can even have it happen otherwise. If you speak to these nonprofit developers, it can't happen. Now, we don't even have it happening. We have an opportunity, and it may be our pilot project with the Catholic Charities. And if this passes through, if this goes through passage and what have you, and to follow up with whatever kind of amendment we may have, I only know of one project today on Maui that may be taking this into consideration. And it's a nonprofit, and it's to serve and rent out to those most in need. If you look at the AMI that is allowed with this. Other than that, I don't know. And the subsidy is not coming from government. The subsidy is coming actually from the credits to the developers. So it's either we try and subsidize as government, or the developers will subsidize it through the credits that they pencil out. Mr. White.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the challenge with the credits, because it does seem like we're allowing someone not to build the next time. But the credits are a method of financing this project, the next project. So we do have a nonprofit that is willing to build rentals, but in order to make this project pencil out, they need the credits. So there are two levels of risk that they face. One is whether they're going to be able to rent it out. And it seems to me that with today's market, that's going to be a relatively easy thing to do. But there's no movement, if it's all affordable, which I believe this is, there's no movement available to them in the rents. This particular project has no market. And it's in the bill that if they do rent it at market, the difference between what they're allowed to charge and what they're charging as an affordable, and the amount they're charging as a market, goes into the affordable housing fund. So they're not keeping it. So the risk in this case is that they have no flexibility in the rents that they can charge. The big risk is that they will get these credits, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to sell the credits. And there's no guaranteed price at which to sell those credits. So, we've all heard prices from, I think, $50,000 up to $100,000. Our subsidy for most of our affordable housing projects where we provide county funding is somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 average. Goes from, I think the highest we've done is $250,000, and we've had some down at $50,000. But I think the average is about $100,000. So, as Mr. Hokama has pointed out many, many times, there's no such thing as affordable housing. It's all subsidized housing. We either subsidize it through the Affordable Housing Fund, or we subsidize it with credits, or we subsidize housing for sale by charging the market purchasers enough money, if the market will bear it, to make up for the discount that is being given to the affordable rentals. So there's 3 levels of subsidy. This is simply one level, one type of subsidy. In every single project, there is significant risk of timing, of product availability, and so we can. I'm not terribly excited about putting a drop-dead date on the value of a credit, because market conditions, if you completed a project in 2008, and then we had the fall off that we had, it may take you quite a long time to sell those credits. I don't know how many. I don't remember when the DHHL credits were issued, but it seems like those credits have been around a long, long time, and there's still 42 outstanding. So that 42 translates into a loss for that developer of the money that he put into the project, and in return receive those credits. So it's, if you're given a gift certificate, that gift certificate, as far as I'm concerned, can go away because you haven't put out any money. But this is a purchased gift certificate, so to speak. And there's a state law that says if you purchase a gift certificate, there is no expiration date, because it's a value that you have put your own money into. It's not a gift. And so I'm kind of torn whether we should put I don't think we should sunset the credit provisions. It may be logical to put some sort of an expiration date on a project. And is that 10 years after the project is completed? That's probably fair. I don't think we can encourage further development by saying you only have 2 years, because then you're going to be sitting there with credits that you can't sell because everyone's going to say, well, I just have to wait another 18 months, and then they're going to feel like they can't sell them, so I'll get them nice and cheap. The more we restrict the value, the less value there is to the credits, the less housing we're going to build now. So I'm a little concerned that I understand the concern with the credits, because it makes us feel like somebody's getting a deal. But the focus needs to be on the housing units we are creating now, not the ones that might be created by somebody using, or not created by somebody using that credit to offset. So anyway, excuse me for going on, but thank you, Chair.
Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. White just said about everything I was going to say, and plus he said a little bit more. But I not only agree with him, but I'd like to stress that the credit system that we have is the one thing in our 21H projects especially that makes it viable to have an applicant come forward, and especially when you have 100% affordable housing, this is what makes it viable for them to do it. If we mess with that too much, it's not going to work. I like what's before us today. If later somebody wants to come up with something, Mr. Okama's suggestion was interesting, that's fine. But I think we need to focus on what we need to do to get affordable housing. Everybody here, I think, realizes how very little has come forward, and any housing projects that have come through have been 21H projects. So I think we need to be very aware that we do not want to discourage people that will come forward to build our housing. I'd like to see this pass out. If members can come forward and find some viable changes to this that still make it to where the developers can maximize the use to bring their projects forward, fine. But that could take some time, and I would really hope that we could pass this out today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Any other comments, Mr. Wade?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to hear from Catholic Charities, if they're still here, whether a restriction on the whether there's a 10-year restriction on the viability of the credits, whether that would impact their decision making.
Chair, could I just point out, I'm not sure if Mr. White is talking about my proposal, because I wasn't trying to restrict the use of the credits. My proposal was to restrict the program, so if the credits are received within that 10 years, there's no restriction on them. But my thought was that if we sunset the program, that hopefully builders will come out sooner rather than later to be part of the program. But I never proposed sunsetting the value of that credit once you get it.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So
yeah, I understand. You're saying that the building has to get built.
Right. You participate in the program within the next 10 years, because the whole idea is to push the building to happen sooner rather than later.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood that.
Mr. Uyoka, you don't get your credits till you bill, right?
Yes, Chair, that is correct.
Mr. Hokama?
Did the department consider non-transferable of the credit?
Thank you,
Mr.
Chair.
Almeida?
Sorry, Mr. Okama, non-transferable.
The credit cannot be transferred to another. If you earn it, it's yours. You cannot sell it, transfer it, or reassign. It's yours. Either you use it or you lose it from what you earn.
I understand.
And does it make sense to consider non-transferability to force you to build the credits or use the credits?
Mr. Almeida?
Thank you, General. Mr. Okama, that's a very good point. Under the current format, again, for 2.96, the for sale credits do not have a particular restriction. It's hard to say because there's no guarantee that a certain developer is going to build another project here locally. And the subsidy they receive from the credit might be the only way that they are allowed the opportunity to build a low-income housing project on Maui. So that might be the only thing that makes me a little wary of putting that particular restriction on, but I understand what you're saying, and it's a valid point. Thank you.
No, and my point is this. Let's say I get 50 credits for this next project, yeah? And for my project to work, I'm estimating I'm going to get $1,000 per credit, or whatever, it'd be $10,000. And nobody offers me that kind of money for my credits. So my project cannot pencil out anyway. So what the hell good is the credits?
Yeah. In that particular scenario, yes, that's a very good point. They would be not in a situation where the subsidy would do them any good if the credit didn't have any value.
Mr. Uyoka?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on to what Mr. Almeida mentioned, it may be difficult if the credits are non-transferable for a group like Catholic Charities, only because I don't think they ever build any market rate projects. So the credit, therefore, would be valueless to them if they were to receive it, because they would never need a credit themselves. But I understand the concept. I think we have something similar, and used to have something similar to park assessment credits. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember King?
Yes, Chair. I would be interested in hearing from Catholic Charities if they have a value in mind, if they have a buyer in mind, or what is the if because what I heard earlier was that they need this credit to move ahead with their project. So I wonder if we could ask them to maybe.
Can I have a representative?
Maybe they can give us some information on what they see as the value of these credits and who they might sell them to. Because I think that is the value of them, having them so that they can sell them to other entities, so.
Thank you, Councilmember King.
Hi, my name is Jeff Furuta with Catholic Charities. Right now, for the land purchase, we have an agreement with A&B for purchasing the land for $2 million plus 66 credits. So the land was appraised at approximately $7.1 million. So these credits would fill that gap between the $2 and the $7 million, so roughly $75,000 apiece.
Okay, so you've already got a buyer for them, basically, and they're planning to use those to offset some future need they might have for affordable housing. Okay.
Any further question for Mr. Furuta? Any comments you'd like to add to this?
No, just that, these credits are really important to the development of affordable housing. It's just adding another layer of subsidy for us to build these projects. It's a very competitive market out there for these developers doing this kind of projects, and the funds are very limited. So just having this extra money out there, helps the project pencil out tremendously.
Okay, and then maybe I could just ask, do you have a large concern about not being able to rent these out at the affordable rate? Because
no, I mean, before we do any project, and as part of our application process, we have to do a market study. And the market, it says there's that need for that income level, 60% and below.
Okay.
We've done 17 projects on Oahu already, and we have waiting lists for all of our projects. All of our projects are 100% affordable, 60% AMI and below for 61 years.
Okay, so you don't really need this 30-day clause in there?
Well, again, we're locked into our AMI, our rents.
Okay.
Yeah, we have no flexibility on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. White, you're good? Okay. So members, any further discussion?
Sure.
Cochran?
Thank you. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe Pulelehu is looking to do rentals. They're in the process. He is in the process, and that's like 1,400 units.
Mr. Uyoka or department?
I believe he's been working with department to try and figure this out right now. So how is this?
I'll have the department answer your question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member Cochran, for that question. We have been working on the Pulelehu project with the developer. I would hesitate to speak on where it's at this moment. The developer is currently working through the State Land Use Commission as well as the various departments. There's a lot of hurdles that he has to overcome with regards to this project. So I would not want to put a percentage on what the chances are that he'll be able to do it as planned. But he has discussed, the possibility on if the passage of this bill was to happen, if he built over and above his requirement, would he be eligible for credit? So we've had to tell him at this point there is not that option unless, the passage of this bill happens. But he has inquired about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then I'm trying to factor in the excess amount when renting a unit out of into market type rates, and so it looks like it can be upon tenant vacating. The length of time could be upon tenant vacating the unit or expiration of the 12-month period, whichever comes sooner. So then, I guess I was just trying to factor and have this. This is a whole new proposal, so we haven't gotten any money due to this type of predicament occurring at this time.
Mr. Uyoka?
Yes, Chair. I don't think we even have any 2.96 rental projects out there right now.
Okay, so this will be the first of its kind.
Well, not even the first. This is just new language, so there's no money that's come in because we've never had a 2.96 rental done.
Okay. And yeah, I guess there's another piece of language, just curious why it's being deleted. The HUD, page 3, item 4C, rental rates set by department is being taken out, and you just want to go based on HUD income limits. So is there a reasoning for that? Versus, sorry, page 3, items 4C 2C, the bottom of the, more towards the bottom of the page, second paragraph from the bottom
2C.
of page 3. Are we on the same document?
Deletion of D
So you're
and addition of C.
removing set by department, is that correct?
If I may, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Oyo.
The reason for that is technically the department doesn't really set the HUD rental rates. It's set by HUD. So they're just following HUD. So the department doesn't actually set the rates. That's just clarification.
Sorry, Chair. Right. I understand you don't set the HUD rates, but we could do better than HUD rates. Right? I mean, in this section, I don't know where exactly, but department has set rates in particular for Lanai, Molokai, and Hana. So I'm just looking at department could also set better rates than what HUD is calling for here.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is HUD takes care of all of that for us. The county doesn't really touch those HUD rates. If the council wanted to change all of that, it has the authority to, but as far as the department's concerned right now, they don't set the rates. They just follow what HUD sets for the county. Thank you.
Okay. So, sorry, Chair, if I can point out where I'm page 2, number top of the page, number 3, last sentence, area medium as established by HUD or as adjusted by the department for Hana, Lanai, Molokai. So here it's stating that department is making adjustments. Is that right? For areas like Hana, Lanai, Molokai.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Member Cochran, we follow the HUD guidelines with regards to the census data provided for Hana, Molokai, and Lanai, and it's formulaic as how we calculate those area median incomes for those areas, but it's based off of the census data from HUD.
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Councilmember King.
Thank you. I have one last question. Okay, this is really a complicated bill, but so we have a 30-year deed restricted period for the affordable rentals. So if there's periods within that 30 years where it's going to market, does that add on to their, are they allowed to spend time during, and I'm not talking about Catholic Charities because I have full faith that they're going to be, that they've got a wait list, but a lot of what we're trying to do here is to prevent someone from taking advantage outside of what the intention is. So if we have a 30-year and yet we're allowing, you can't rent it out for 30 days, you can go to market, maybe you sign a lease for a year, does that extend that deed restriction then? You have to have 30 years of rental at for the affordable market.
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. It would not, because part of the deed restriction, while you might not have a market person in there, you will be forking over the difference in rent to the county, and that's part of the deed restriction. So it wouldn't be fair if we say you got to give us the money and we're going to extend your deed restricted period longer. The other thing I should have brought up earlier, and I apologize, was the other issue we had when we initially had the language, we didn't allow for graduated income tenants. So if a tenant were to continue to move up income groups, the language in here, which is, I believe the council was okay with the last meeting, was they're allowed to stay. They just hit a point where after they move through all the income groups, they would just pay 30% of their gross income as rent. So it's kind of allowed to be in here under this language, because my understanding is you can't just kick people out when they graduate income groups. So it kind of all fits together where we're at least getting the excess money into our affordable housing fund. And yeah, there might be situations where the person graduates out of the income group, so technically the unit isn't a residential workforce housing unit at that point. But as we all understand, we can't just kick the person out. So
that difference goes into the fund?
Correct. Okay. Same as if the landlord can't find a renter in the market, in an income group, goes into the fund. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Clarity. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Uyoka. Any further discussion, members? Okay. So members, if there is no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend passage on first reading of the revised proposed bill entitled A Bill for an Ordinance Amending Chapter 2.96 Maui County Code relating to residential workforce housing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Member Carroll and a second by Member White. Any further discussion?
Sure.
Yes.
I don't know if I need to make, I would like to make an amendment to the proposal.
Okay.
Okay. So I'd like to add a, I guess a section 6, or maybe Corp Counsel can advise if that should go, if they should go under section 5. That this ordinance shall take effect upon its approval and sunset 10 years from the whatever that date is.
Mr. Uyoka.
Thank you, Chair. That would prove very difficult because some of this is the section priority and the deed restriction language. So if you were to sunset at 10 years and a project were to come in at 9 years, if all this language goes away, we'd be confused as to what happens 10 years from now. Thank you.
I'm not sure. You just told me earlier that it would be easy to add that statement on to earlier in our discussion.
Mr. Uyoka.
I believe my comment was directed at having the credits expire in 10 years. It would be a
No, that wasn't.
simpler.
But that wasn't what I was asking before. I just said, to have the program expire in 10 years, and the goal of that would be to encourage the affordable housing development now, and
sure.
so we don't have this program going on and on and on, and we. I have real concerns about the program as it's worded and some of these other things. I think our opportunity to get more affordable housing rests in the idea of having a shorter period when they can do this, but otherwise we're just looking at this extended period of 1-for-1 credits that's going to go on forever. I don't see us getting immediate or extra affordable housing unless we're just doing this for one project.
Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you, Member King. To kind of echo what Mr. Uyoka was saying, the average time, because these agreements that are entered into with the department are done pretty early in the process. Up front, they enter into their residential workforce housing agreements with us. In discussions with Director Spence on timeliness or how long it takes to get entitlements and see a project from beginning to fruition when the credits would actually be earned, the average given to us was 7 to 8 years average. We've seen some 14 years, some 15 years. So the developer wouldn't realize the credits until the very end of the 10-year period and would not have much time to utilize them, I guess, is the concern for the department in that particular situation. Thank you.
So, aren't we trying to expedite things here for affordable housing? Are we just assuming that it's going to take 20 years to ever get this, get where we need to go with starting this program?
The credit program was designed to help subsidize the lower area median income rental projects. We are always trying to collaborate with the other departments and trying to move the process faster. Unfortunately, that particular facet of it is out of our control, but we want to see more projects come online and move forward, and we feel that this credit program will help assist in doing that. Again, unfortunately, we don't have control over how long it takes these developers to get through the process. I know they as well would like it to move a little bit quicker, but they're bound by the processes that they currently have to go through.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, would you be amenable to a 15-year period?
Thank you, Chair. Again, whatever this body decides collectively, we're open to consider or to abide by. Thank you.
So, Member King, would you like to state your amendment again?
Yeah, I would like to, well, I guess we would be adding on another section, Chair. This we could add it on to Section 5 and just say this ordinance shall take effect upon its approval and be valid for 15 years from that date.
From the date of actual...
Of approval. Because there's no date here. We don't know when we're going to approve this.
For the
Chair.
approval, yes.
Before she makes a motion, let me just ask a question. In the process of getting approvals through the Planning Commission, there is generally a 2-year time frame within which you have to. I can't remember what was it, Mr. Uyoka. You have to start. You have to get the project underway in 5 years and you have 2 years to construct. I'm just wondering if there's, I see where Ms. King is coming from, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we can say that your project has to be initiated, because we all understand that the process is long, but can we say that the project must be initiated within
10 years.
7 to 10 years and must be completed within 15?
If I may, Chair.
Yes.
Just for clarification, if you're speaking about the 201H processes or projects, typically Chair Carroll has language inserted into the exemptions that everything disappears after 5 years. I believe grading, grubbing permits, or building permits being pulled will be the signal of commencement of construction. Typically, lately in our residential workforce housing agreements, we've been putting a sunset in those also for if nothing happens within 5 years, I believe is the date we've been using with developers. You got to come back for the residential workforce housing agreement. But I'm not sure, again, how we would work that language into this bill right now. That's one of the difficulties. Thank you.
Remember?
I think what what Chair White is talking about is to make a statement that projects that qualify for these credits must be initiated in the first 10 years from the date of approval and must be completed 15 years from the date of approval. So they have to be initiated within the next 10 years in order to qualify for credits under this program. And then they have to be completed within 15 years of that date.
Right.
So that would be the proposed amendment in order to qualify for these credits.
Mr. Uyoka, I'm going to call a brief recess. Yeah. .100, which essentially is, addresses that concern about number 6 under there about the 30 days going to market. Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember King to amend by deleting all of Section 3. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Did you second it, Mr. Carroll? Yeah. Okay, seconded by Mr. Carroll. So, Mr. Uyoka, if I may ask, what kind of difference this would make on the 2.96, just for further clarification?
Thank you, Chair. By deleting Section 3 of this bill, you'll just be leaving the section selection priority as is in the current bill, which essentially, instead of having allowing the developer to rent to market after a 30-day period, it would just say any rental unit vacancy shall be filled by an applicant in the same income group as the original tenant to maintain an equal distribution of rentals across the very low income and low income, below moderate income, and moderate income groups. And I don't believe that'll conflict with the graduated tenancy language because that won't be a vacancy. That person will still be in there, so it won't be considered a vacancy. So thank you, Chair. I don't see a problem with this amended language.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Uyoka. So, Mr. White?
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not eliminating Section 3. We're eliminating the changes recommended in Section 3. Is that
Mr.
right?
Uyoka?
That is correct, but part of that process is deleting out Section 3 because basically Section 3 is amending 2.96, whatever. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
4 of us in favor, Mr. Carroll, Mr. White, Ms. King, and myself. Excused is Mr. Atai, Mr. Hokama, and Mr. Guzman. So motion carried on the amendment. Now we go back to the main motion. Any further discussion with the main motion? I believe we had a motion in place and a second.
No discussion?
No further discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor for passage of 2.96 with its amended deletion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We have the majority votes of 4. So motion is carried. Aye from Mr. Carroll, Mr. White, Ms. King, and myself, Crivello. Excuse Mr. Atai, Mr. Hokama, and Mr. Guzman. Members, motion carried. Thank you. So for the next item, because we're at bare quorum, and I understand everybody has their efforts to not drive on this, trying to escape the crowdedness of our highway. If there are no objection, members, I would like to defer item number HHT-2, paren 1, amendments to the residential workforce housing policy, proposed amendments relating, I'm sorry, HHT-2, paren 2, amendments to the residential workforce housing policy, proposed amendment to housing restrictions. If there's no objections, I'd like to defer this matter.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you, members. I really want to thank you for sticking it out with us. I know it was a very complex issue. So, members, I'd like to thank my staff, Stacy, Samalu, and Shelley for all of their efforts. I'd like to also thank the administration for participating in both of our items today. And thank you very much for your participation, and enjoy your evening, perhaps at the fair. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.